Well, hey there, Mama, and welcome back to the Moms Overcoming Overwhelm podcast, episode number 172. I'm Emily McDermott, and I'm beside you on this journey as we work together to declutter your home, head, and heart. I don't know about you, but things have been a little stressful for me and my family. Pretty much everyone has been sick. My youngest has the stomach bug he's just getting over. My husband was sick with the flu. I have a cough, which is part of the reason that I am not doing a solo episode this week because I figured I'd have to start and stop it 100 times. So 'tis the season for sickness, and also 'tis the season for us to be with our family, and we have break coming up for most of us. I thought it was a perfect opportunity to bring you this conversation with Tira Wages, all about how we can resolve family conflict and be more connected using something called the connection codes, which she talks about. So in this episode, we're talking about this tool, which just takes 4 minutes a day and can really help transform your relationship, not only with your spouse, but also with your kids. We talk about how to get them on board with this if perhaps you think they might be resistant. And we also talk about when it comes to us expressing our emotions to our kids in a healthy way, how can we do that without making our kids feel responsible for our happiness? So Tira is a wife, a mom of four, a podcast host, and she is the CEO of the Connection Codes. She's passionate about empowering others to regulate their emotions with simple, practical tools and helps women who feel overwhelmed and tired sort through the mess in their minds, leading to more energy, more clarity, and more joy. And in the show notes, there is a link so that you can get your free copy of the Core Emotions Wheel. Definitely want you to check that out. So what do you say? Grab the notebook and pen, and let's dive into today's conversation with Tira Wages. Hey there, Mama. Are you tired of all the stuff crowding your home, calendar, and mind? Do you wish you could say goodbye to the endless to-do list running around in your head? Want to declutter but don't know where to start? You're in the right place. Welcome to Moms Overcoming Overwhelm, where you will find proven and practical solutions to declutter your home, head, and heart. Hi, I'm Emily, a wife, boy mom, and simplicity seeker. I struggled to get pregnant and felt overwhelmed until I discovered decluttering could create the physical and emotional space I needed to become a mom. Now, 2 kids later, I've transformed my life and motherhood by developing simple systems around decluttering, capsule wardrobes, kid stuff, cleaning and tidying, meal planning, time management, and more, and I can't wait to share them with you. If you're ready to reclaim the time and energy you crave, be present with your kids, and finally enjoy the life and motherhood you so deserve, let's kick overwhelm to the curb, shall we? Grab your lukewarm coffee, your notebook and pen, and clear up some counter space. Let's do this. Well, hi, Tara. Thank you so much for coming on the Moms Overcoming Overwhelm podcast. I am excited to talk to you today.
I am very excited to be here. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so Tara and I kind of connected through the wonderful world of online business and
Yes.
podcasting. And I love sort of the work that you're doing to
Mm.
help couples and families and individuals really be able to resolve conflict in a healthy way and be able to
Yeah.
deal with, we talk a lot of course, about clutter, all sorts of clutter on this show, physical
Yes.
clutter, calendar clutter, but then of course there's like the emotional, relational clutter. So I
Yeah.
can't wait to dive in. And I would love it if you could, before we did that, introduce yourself and tell us about you and your family, how you serve couples through the work that you do, and anything you
Yeah.
like to do for fun.
Yes. Yes. So, yep, I am Tira Wages. I've been married for 16 years. I'm a mom to 4 kids, 11, 9, 7, and 5. So they're little stair steppers. And I work with the connection codes. My husband and I went through their program. We were founded by a marriage and family therapist, Dr. Glenn Hill, and his wife, Phyllis. And they created a framework to teach you how to regulate your emotions while connecting in your relationship to overcome conflict and clear your brain of that emotional clutter. We refer to it as a flood. And so when
Mhm.
we are overwhelmed, we are flooded with emotion. And so they created a very simple tool to help you do just that. And my husband and I got lucky and were invited to an online group back when COVID hit in 2020. And so we were like, sure, we don't have anything else to do. We'll join in. And previously, we were in the world of online marketing. We did video production for some high level marketers, Amy Porterfield, Marie
Mhm.
Forleo. Like we've been in the room with some of the greatest minds of online business. And we went through Dr. Glenna Phillips's program, the connection codes. We were like, oh my gosh, this is different. This is life changing. This is
Mhm.
not just business related, although it helps so much in business because it helps you clear the overwhelm, but it has changed our home. And so I like slowly worked my way in with them and like, let me do a little video for you. Let me do this video for you. And then 2 years ago, they named me CEO. I am partner, and we are trying to help couples learn how to connect deeply without the emotional clutter and damage. And it's absolutely beautiful and life changing. For fun, you asked that part as well.
Yeah.
What do we do for fun? I love to travel. That is one of our great passions. My husband and I did almost 30 countries before we had kids. And we just got back from a trip in New York together. And I love being where the people are. I love all seeing all different types of places. And in New York, we were like, oh my gosh, we've heard more other like languages and
Yeah.
culture than we've even heard English today. And it just brought me so much joy.
Oh.
So yeah.
Oh, I really love that. And my husband, we're just about to come up on our 16th. So
Okay.
we're right there
Yes.
with you. And my kids are 6 and 8. So
Okay.
stair steppers kind of in a different way. But
Yes.
I would love it, especially kind of through the lens of my maybe pre-connection codes and
Yeah.
post-connection codes, the tone of your home and how, everyone in motherhood has had seasons of overwhelm at some time or another. And I was just curious, can you bring us back to a time and maybe talk about kind of pre-connection codes, kind of like what was
Yeah.
going on as far as like how you might communicate with your husband or your kids, and maybe how that was able to shift once you learned some of those tools through the program?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. My oldest child was 5 when the baby was born. And that season, I look back now at photos and I'm like, I was a shell of a person.
Mhm.
Like I did not even exist as a human in that season of life. Just lack of sleep. My husband, we had the video production company, and so he was still traveling. That's how we
Yeah.
made income. And so he was gone a lot during that season.
Mhm.
And it was incredibly lonely, incredibly painful. And my oldest, she was really struggling. Everything was intense for her. And I didn't really understand it at the time. And so she was having these really big outbursts before school. She would pick out her clothes, but then cry whenever we were actually trying to get her dressed.
Mhm.
It was extremely painful. And she ended up getting diagnosed with an anxiety disorder before she turned 6, which was just mind blowing to me that someone that little, that
Mhm.
young, could already experience such intense anxiety. And so, as a mom, I was completely drowning, completely overwhelmed, just balancing the logistics of running our home with a husband that's traveling. And so our connection points were very minimal at the time. And I was just operating in overdrive. I was just in a survival state and I didn't know what to do with it. I was just like, okay, this is it.
Yeah.
And I definitely had seasons during COVID, before we got good at using the connection codes, there wasn't a community built at that time. And now we have a community. So I didn't really know how to utilize it day to day yet, where I was like, I, my family would be better off if I was not here. Like things
Mhm.
got really, really dark for me. In thinking, I just don't know how to do this as a mom. I am
Mhm.
not good at this. And then on the flip side of that, once we started really using these tools and equipping our kids with the language to communicate what's happening in their body, everything shifted. I recently was at an event and someone was asking what I do, and my daughter happened to be with me. And she started talking. She's the oldest, and so she feels more comfortable at this point talking to adults than kids, even. She's in that like weird in between stage. And so she just like piped in and was talking about how she was like, my belly used to hurt every day, and my belly doesn't hurt anymore
Wow.
now that I know how to process my emotions. And so it has definitely changed everything about how we show up for each other.
Oh, wow. That's really beautiful. I think my oldest child, he's definitely more, as much as I try to save him from the perfectionism that
Yes,
has plagued
yes.
me my entire life, I can see that in him, and it concerns me because I see how, he gets one little thing wrong on a
Yep,
quiz and then he's spiraling. And
yep.
I have been kind of looking for ways to allow him to better communicate kind of what
Mm,
he's feeling, like you said,
yeah,
in your body, especially. So I think that's really helpful, especially for the moms here that maybe they need some support either in how they're communicating, with their spouse or with their kids, because all of
mm,
these different ages and stages, there's just like so many changes going on. And then we're
yeah.
trying not to be like overwhelmed
Yes,
at every
yes.
stage. And so you were talking a little bit about it, but can you explain kind of like what the connection codes actually are and how
Yeah.
they actually help us with naming our feelings, to be able to process emotions, to resolve conflict? How do they work exactly?
Yeah, absolutely. So if any of your listeners or yourself have seen the movie Inside Out 2,
Hmm.
first, if you haven't seen it and you're listening, I could not encourage you to see another movie more. It is such a powerful movie to even start the conversation in your home.
Hmm.
But when I watched that movie, when I wept the whole time, but I was like, this is what I do. This is the entire purpose of what I am, my life's purpose is. And so in the movie, um, the characters, the core emotions get put into a glass jar and shoved to the back of the brain.
Hmm.
And that is what happens to us as kids. We are taught to not feel what we are feeling. So, for example, if my son falls on the sidewalk and his knee is bleeding, he has blood coming down his knee, and I run over, the instinct is to say, you're okay, you're
Hmm.
okay. And as a parent, we know ultimately they are okay, and we want to reassure them that they're okay. But their brain is thinking, I am bleeding. I am hurt. I am not okay. And so we are teaching them from a good intention to not listen to the message that their brain is sending them. So we are essentially putting that hurt in a glass jar and shoving it to the back of the brain. Well, what happens over time is especially like our generation, what happened with us is those emotions got shoved back. And then the more complex emotions take over: anxiety, overwhelm, confusion, disappointment, envy. Now the emotions are much more complex, and it creates a flood in our brains. So, what we at the Connection Codes do is we have a 4-minute tool that helps you unlock that glass jar so you can get those core emotions out of the glass jar, back in control, because when those emotions are there, now you're in control. You're able to pinpoint exactly what is happening with you from your core. So
Hmm.
we have a 4-minute tool that has, which are any of your listeners will be able to download. Do you put links in the show notes where they
Yep.
can access it? So this tool will be available to anyone, and it's just the simple core emotion wheel. So
Hmm.
there are emotion wheels online, but they have like 100 emotions on there. Even looking at them can be very overwhelming.
Hmm.
And many of those emotions are complex, which means they're made up of multiple of the core.
Yeah.
Even with confusion, if we get to confusion, what is that? Well, it's probably fear or maybe some loneliness in it, sadness that you don't know what's happening. So we actually help you break it down to those basic emotions so you can really access what is happening. And so our wheel has the 8 core emotions. And what you do is, so for me and my husband, the first time we ever did it, that was the moment that changed everything.
Mm.
We had been in our homes 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. He is my best friend. And he went through and you share the most recent time you felt an emotion. If you
Mhm.
can't think of a recent time, you can think of a big time. And if you can't think of a big time, you can make something up. Because again, the goal of doing the exercise is to relearn what that emotion feels like.
Mm.
And so he got to his sad and he shared with me what his sadness was, and my mind was blown. I had no idea that that was happening inside his body. And it wasn't that he didn't want to tell me, he just didn't even know how to tell me what he was
Yeah.
experiencing. And that was the moment I was like, okay, this is different. This actually lets me in on his experience. I can now approach him from a different way. And same with my kids. When my now 9-year-old would do the wheel, starting out, when he got to lonely, he'd be like, I was all alone on an island. And that's obviously never happened. But now, when we do the wheel together at night, he can pinpoint the exact moment he felt lonely in his
Mm.
day. My friend didn't want to, he ran from me on the playground. Like he knows exactly what that feels like. So we are essentially teaching what these emotions feel like. So then when they hit you at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon, you go,
Mhm.
oh, okay, that's guilt. What's happening for me? What do I need? And
Yeah.
we can connect with ourselves and we can connect with those around us.
Oh, that is so simple yet very powerful. And I
Yes.
love the simplicity of it. And also, I've heard about this idea of name it to claim it, as far as like
Yes.
being able to really name your emotion can help it not be this sort of swirl or flood, of like chaos.
Yes.
And the fact is, like the fact that it's a certain limited number and it's very like the visual is helpful, especially for kids, sort of all
Yes.
ages. And I'm curious, in either your own family or with the families that you have worked with, what if there is resistance? Like, what if I have
Mm.
my wonderful husband who I love dearly? But
Yes.
he and I
Yes.
are like different faith backgrounds. Like he is a questioner. If you know anything about, Gretchen Rubin's four tendencies, like he questions
Yes.
everything. He wants the data, he wants the research. And so I could, if I came to him with the core emotions wheel, I could see him being very resistant. And I'm
Mm.
curious, like, how would you go about approaching potentially resistant spouses or kids about
Yeah.
using this tool?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. And really, one of the top questions that we get asked. First, I would recommend our book. Dr. Glenn Phyllis wrote a
Mhm.
book that has all the science. So if you are with someone that is very data and science centered,
Yeah.
then this is based in science. This is actually our brain chemistry, and which is something I really love about it. And second, we come from a place of joy. I would have a lot of joy if you would try this with me,
Mhm.
if you would do this with me. And especially in those beginning, the first several times you do it, um, don't approach when you do the wheel as an accusatory of, I feel hurt because you haven't been there for me
Mm.
for the last 8 years. Start really simple and just let them in on what else is happening in your life so they can get clued in on the experience, get them more comfortable doing it where it doesn't feel like a painful experience for them until you get safe enough where you have to build safety with each other.
Mhm.
That's a huge part of what we teach. When my husband is sharing with me when he feels hurt or any other emotion, my job is to hold space for him. We call it the ooh at the connection code. So I simply ooh him, which is an audible, like, ooh, okay. Yeah, I can see why that would be
Mhm.
hurtful. Like, my job in that moment is to not fix, defend, correct. I'm just there to hold space. And so until you can build that safety and that trust with them, I would not go too deep.
Yeah.
So even for me now, when I share with my kids, because one thing that's important for me is that my kids understand I have emotions. I feel
Mhm.
sadness, I feel shame, I feel hurt, just like they do. But when I do the wheel with them, I may talk about hurt from work, or I may talk
Mhm.
about a shame that I experience if I spoke poorly to them or to my husband Wes. I I do not I don't use that time to reprimand them.
Yeah.
I don't unload everything they did wrong that day in that moment because my goal is to connect with them.
Mhm.
And so I want to create that safe space so they can share with me what happened for them that day. Now I'm clued into their experience. I can talk to my therapist. I can talk to my husband about the other deep, hard moments that I'm experiencing. So I really do try to navigate it from a place of connection. That is our goal, connection. And when you come from that frame of mind, it helps bring it to someone that may be more resistant. My
Yeah.
goal is to connect with you and to create safety for you.
Yeah. Oh, I love that, the holding space. That's so important, especially with parenting, because I am definitely a fixer. And
Same.
so then it's kind of like they, tell you something very vulnerable, your kids do. And then it's like, oh, well, did you talk to a grown up at school? Did you do this? Did you do this? And it's just like, you just want to hold space. I don't know. A long time ago, I saw this YouTube video. I'm just thinking about it. It's called It's Not About the Nail, and I'll link to it in the show notes. You might appreciate it with work you do. And there is a couple, they're sitting on the couch, and the wife goes, oh, I have these headaches all the time. And I take off my sweater and it keeps snagging. And I don't know why. And it's just like really, really hard. And the husband's like, it's because you have a nail in your head. There's literally a nail sticking out of her head. And she's like, I
Yep.
don't want you to fix it. I just want
Yeah.
you to listen to me right now. And he's like, no, but
Yes.
literally there's a nail in your head. So a lot of times this kind of like the stereotype that the men are wanting to be the fixers and the women are like, I just want you to hear me. I just want you to listen. But really it goes both ways. It's that sometimes we're holding space for our, husbands, sometimes we're holding space for our kids, and it's hard not to like jump in and
Mm.
try to fix it even if we have good ideas.
One of the things I have found is that in doing this work, oftentimes the other person, like the person experiencing it, by actually getting to their core, they can realize themselves, oh, I have a nail in my head. Like
Yeah.
eventually they could get to, oh, I feel hurt. Where do I feel hurt? And they can remove the nail themselves versus the other person. So last night, my daughter gets off the bus, comes inside. They are separating the buses. Her friends are now going to be on a just different bus. And it's
Oh.
super sad, lots of emotion, but it's still unclear what all is happening. She comes into the kitchen, and my husband's reaction was, and he just wasn't thinking all the way through in the moment, uh, we don't have all the information yet. We don't have all the information yet. And now she's arguing with him. I do know, like, you aren't there.
Hmm.
And she ends up going into the room. And so I come in and I just hold her. I ask her what's happening for her because we ask the question what's happening versus
Mm.
why are you upset? Because that is more of an invitation to the experience versus an accusation.
Yeah.
So I'm like, what's happening for you? And she starts sharing her sadness and her fear and these things. Within 2 minutes, I held her. She cried. She was moving on. She was like,
Hmm.
right, can we go do my nails now? Like next thing versus my husband. And I went back, I was like, buddy, you're resisting her energy. Like, don't stop resisting her. And he ended up saying, I feel guilt about that. I missed with you on that. They could
Hmm.
reconnect quickly. But when we can actually slow down in those experiences, slower is faster.
Mm.
They would have been in there arguing for 10 minutes, mad at each other the rest of the night, had they kept going on that path of him just trying. He's speaking truth.
Yeah.
He's being like, we don't know all the information, but slowing her down, letting her get to her experience, she could piece it together for herself. And now we're connected, which is the goal.
Mhm.
And she is like, solve the problem for herself in that moment. She got to that, which is what I
Yeah.
want her to be able to do when she's 25,
Mhm.
when she's 45. And so we're starting today while she's 11, and girl is getting it. So,
Oh, I love that so much. The slower is faster. That's so true. I've noticed that with my youngest. I've heard that sometimes kids could be more like task oriented versus like
mm,
relationship oriented. And my oldest is very like oldest child doing, the morning routine and everything's done and check it off the list. And then you have my youngest and he's doing his routine in the morning and he's like, can you just come keep me company? And of course,
yes.
I'm trying to get ready and I'm like, no, like I need to get ready, whatever. And then I'm realizing kind of like he just needs something different and it's going to go
Mm,
a lot faster to get to the next thing if
Yes.
I'm able to kind of give him what he needs. But
Yeah.
sometimes it's hard because we can be very like task
Mm,
oriented in our
yeah.
lives and task oriented as parents. And I'm just curious. I listened to one of the recent episodes of the Connection Codes podcast, which I'll link in the show notes, about parenting
Mm,
and emotionally processing as parents. And I have always kind of wondered what a quote unquote expert like yourself might say about this,
yeah.
but I have a hard time keeping emotions in. Like my
Mm,
husband can be unflappable. For me, I really feel like I need to emote, like I really need to
mm,
express. But I also don't want to be sharing my emotions with my kids like
mm,
they I don't know, they push me or they hit me. Not so much now, but when they were like toddlers and stuff, very physical. And to be like, ow, that hurt. Mommy's hurt. I'm crying, and to be like, oh, I'm really sad. But the difference between expressing our emotions in a healthy way so our kids understand it's normal to have human emotions. We're
mm,
not robots, we're not perfect, but that they don't have to be responsible for mommy being
mm.
happy all the time. Because I feel
Yes.
like talking about fixing, like kids want to be able to fix it so that mommy and daddy aren't sad if they're sad,
Mm,
and they can feel like that's their responsibility, which is not. So, how have you navigated that either in your own parenting, or what do you advise parents when it comes to healthy emotional expression without our kids feeling responsible for our
right.
happiness?
Yes. I think that's an excellent question. And I would say that it is important that our kids know that actions do lead to hurt. The
Mhm.
example that you gave. If my 5-year-old says, I hate you, oh, sad, that
Yeah.
hurts. And so I definitely am able to express to them the pain that I feel. But in using these core words, I just saying that, oh, sad, that hurts,
Mhm.
versus then unloading.
Yeah.
Previously, I would say, 5 minutes worth of lecture of what that would do to me and all of those things, where now it's very simple. He understands what hurt feels like. That's a word that's connecting for his brain.
Mhm.
And so he can recognize, oh, this action does hurt. And on the flip side of that, I also try to balance out the joy that I experience with them. And also not even joy around their actions. So if he does something great, of course, I'm like, joy that you helped me in the kitchen.
Mhm.
But um joy that you're just my kid. I love being with you. I have so much joy spending time with you. And so I really also try to acknowledge both and hold them equal. And I also remind them. So, for example, if they spill milk, that's an accident and it's spilt in the floor. And oh, I'm so sad about it because I just cleaned our floors last night, that kind of thing. And I'm like, oh, sad. I will often, if I can see if they react to that sadness, be like, oh, I get that. I know it was an accident. Like,
Mhm.
it's okay for me to feel sad about this. It doesn't mean you did anything wrong. Or I'll remind them, like, you're not responsible for my emotions. Like, I'm
Yeah.
responsible for my emotions. And I also teach them that lesson with each other of like, one kid comes to me, he's upset. And he's like, well, so and so is doing this. I'm like, well, what's happening for you? What's
Yeah.
happening in your body? Because you are the one that is experiencing the emotion right now. And they are their own person, like they are responsible for their own actions and
Mhm.
their own emotions. So we just teach that on a daily basis as it comes up. And it is something to be intentional about. It doesn't come naturally because I definitely didn't grow up in a house where we
Right.
talk like this, or where our parents were apologetic if they did emote on to us, whatever
Yeah.
was happening. But I think that in doing this work, the emotions for me, because I am processing them regularly, they
Mhm.
don't weigh as much. Where previously, if I was feeling hurt and I felt hurt again and again and again, and I wasn't acknowledging the hurt, well, within a week, I'm now blowing up.
Yeah.
Now that hurt is secondary anger, and I'm losing my mind and overreacting to things. At least it appears to be an overreaction.
Mhm.
Where now, if I'm processing hurt when I feel it, it's light, it's small. I can
Yeah.
move on from that. I even will tell my husband, like, "Ugh, I'm still thinking about this thing you said. And I felt really hurt, low level hurt, not that big of a deal. I just need to get out of my body." He's like,
Hmm.
"Yeah, I get that." And we move on from
Mm.
it. So even with my kids, the emotions aren't as emotional.
Yeah.
What, like what we view as emotion is often the behavior. They don't really see the behavior of emotion very much. They just hear the emotion itself, and that hits very different in their
Mm.
system.
Yeah, I've noticed that in the seasons of my life, not just motherhood, where I have not expressed that hurt or have not expressed some of those emotions, then it is turns to resentment super
Yes.
quickly because I'm
Yeah.
not expressing it. But just using kind of like a decluttering metaphor, if you keep just like throwing the emotions in the closet and you're like, I'm going to deal with it later, it's fine, like whatever, move on, move on, move on. And then you get to the closet and like all the stuff, it's like the Monica closet and Friends, and it just sort of like falls all over you. And
Yes.
that's not, a healthy way to do it. And I'm curious, like before bed, I'm usually lay with my youngest and we do like a prayer and I don't know if I came up with it, but it's a prom prayer. So we do praise, repent, praying for others, and then myself. Like, what do I need? And for the praise, that's kind of like the joy, gratitude,
Yeah.
what went well. Repent is more like, ooh, kind of what hurt, or like how did I hurt others? And
Mm.
how do you integrate the core emotion wheel and that discussion with your kids? Is it like an evening reflection? Because I find that kids always want to talk most right before bed.
Yes. Yes.
And sort of
Yes.
when do you fit that into your day? And then also with your husband, is there like a regular time or does it just kind of woven into the fabric of your day? Like, how does that work for
Yeah.
you guys?
Yeah. No, that's a great question. I do typically do it at bedtime with my kids.
Mhm.
It is great when my husband is home because we can tag team it.
Yeah.
But otherwise, it's 4 minutes. And now with kids,
Mhm.
it does take a little longer. Like I do have those kids that have the details that they want to share, and I make space for that. But we do tend to do it at bedtime. That's when it does work best. There are times where if my husband is traveling, we'll do it at dinner together,
Mhm.
and that also works really well. For my husband and I, we do it in real time. So
Mm.
if he's feeling loneliness, actually yesterday I was on a podcast and I needed to go upstairs to get headphones and he was sitting there and I didn't acknowledge him. And he was like, "Oh, I feel so sad that you didn't even acknowledge." And I was like, "Oh, buddy, I get that."
Yeah.
And so he just said it in the moment instead of that sitting in him
Mhm.
and then something else sitting in him and then it blowing up. Now, we do like talk a lot about issue specific wheels. So we
Mm.
all have our trigger topics. And if my husband and I, if something comes up that is really emotional, it's something a little bit more heavy, we will sit down and do a core emotion wheel about that specific topic.
Okay.
And that is also really helpful because then if it's a conflict, now we're seeing each other versus the conflict. It's like,
Mhm.
oh, okay, that's why you reacted this way or why you said this or this is long-term pain that we had from 10 years earlier that we can meet each other in a space that's healthy and safe. So we do issue specific wheels as well. And the other thing, sorry, I'm giving too much now,
That's okay.
too many details. I have found because I process in real time, but I'm doing coaching for people. And
Mhm.
so anytime I have a coaching call, we do the core emotion wheel with each other. So I will do the wheel 3 times today before the end of the day. And I have found that using joy has helped me to create new habits. So
Mm.
if I'm wanting to change the habit of exercising, if I process that joy every day by doing the actual wheel, I found that my behavior and my actions are shifting because I'm being more conscious about doing the wheel specifically for that action. And so
Yeah.
there are several ways to use it that are really, really effective. But the goal of it is to relearn what the emotions feel like and use it as a tool for connection with
Mm.
your spouse, with yourself, and with your children.
Oh, that's so great. And I can't wait. I have not had the opportunity to read the book yet. I will link to that also in the show notes because I feel like for people, and it's not that I don't love science, I do geek out on the science. But again, my husband wants like the PowerPoint presentation. like all the
Yes.
science. But I think that that will be good for me because then I can kind of give them the high level. And I think it will definitely improve our communication and also with our kids because they're still at the age where they want to be around us. And
Yeah.
I don't
Yes.
take it for granted. And I
Yeah.
also, again, want them to be emotionally healthy, of course, as we are preparing them to launch, into the world. And
Yeah.
I just
Yeah.
really appreciate all of this really helpful guidance and the fact, again, that it's just a simple tool. We always, talking about how we're so busy and overwhelmed, we don't have the time and all the stuff. This is like 4 minutes and just
Yeah.
really doable. So thank you so much, Tara, for coming and chatting with us
Yes.
today. And I
Thank
would love
you.
it if you could just let us know the best way that people can connect with you and learn more.
Yes, absolutely. So we have our podcast, which is the Connection Codes, and I host it typically with our founders, but we also have like their daughter is coming on with me next week, and she co-created the parenting course that we have.
Nice.
And so we do have other people on as well, but it's a great podcast where we talk all about the science and how to
Mhm.
apply it to your day. And then on Instagram, we are the Connection Codes, but I would definitely recommend starting by going to the show notes and downloading this core emotion
Yes.
wheel for yourself and trying it out for yourself. And then introduce it to a safe person. I always say safe person because it's vulnerable to share.
Mhm.
And to do this work well for yourself, you have to feel safe in
Mhm.
that. So whether it's your child or your spouse, my mom is a connection coder now. So we talk together in using these words, and it is incredibly connecting. So,
Oh,
yeah,
wonderful. Oh, well, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your wisdom. It's just been
thank
really a
you.
treat talking to you.
Thank you so much.
If you like today's podcast, here's what you can do. Just take 30 seconds to leave me a review. I know you're a busy mama, you're overwhelmed, in fact, but 30 seconds of your day makes such an impact. I'll be blessed by your words, they'll definitely make my day. And who knows, you might be entered for this month's giveaway. In Apple Podcasts, scroll down to write a review. Thanks so much for your time. I'm so grateful for you.